Thank you. Before the raffle winners are announced, I have a few brief things. Agent sheets tomorrow for Renee Zuckerbrot, Lee Feldman, and Michelle Brower will be out at breakfast. And their meetings overlap, so please only sign up for one. It's a raffle system to determine who And George Hovis, if you're here, please see Megan after the reading. She's got Betty Davis eyes. We got raffle winners, yeah.
We have two awesome books to give away. Which one are we going to give away first?
Let's give out Christine's.
All right. Prosperous Friends. The winner is Tom DeTita. Are you here? Well, come on. Come and get this book. And the winner of Drunk in Sunlight is Beth Johnson. Beth? Oh. Uh-oh. Beth Johnson, are you here? Oh, my Lord.
I'll take it.
No, you can't have it. Who's number 30?
30. Jeanette Brown.
Jeanette Brown. Jeanette
Brown.
Come on, Brown. Jeanette. Oh my God.
Two more announcements. 10 o'clock, what happens tonight at St. Luke's? Poker. Tomorrow night, St. Luke's, open mic. And now, I love everyone at the conference, but I think that my favorite person at the conference is Christine Schutt.
Gosh. Thank you very much. I think everybody knows how nervous I am and how tranquilized I am. 20 years ago, if you had told me one day I would be tooling around the Sewanee Writers Conference in a golf cart with Diane Johnson, Mary Jo Salter, and Jill McCorkle, I wouldn't have believed you any more than that one day I would sit next to Tim O'Brien and act as co-teacher to writers already bright with new books. I have Wyatt Prunty to thank for the gift of being here among the sequoias of fiction writers and poets, and Miriam and Jim Peters to thank for recording moments that I still don't quite believe have happened. I feel blessed and also obliged not to waste your time having come out on a Monday night to hear new work no one has yet published, no good housekeeping seal of approval on this, a novel, or something in progress that might very well end up as so much does in the drawer. So, I will start with what I am calling pure Hollywood. How disappointing it was to wake intact and far away from the matchstick aftermath of the extinguished fires, thready smoke rising from piles that were homes, the famous modern house, not among them. Mimi? He asked quietly, driving up a slight incline and into a space still hers, everything, all of it. A modern house shaped like slung plates, no corners, different heights. What do they think this place is worth? He asked, still whispering so as not to disturb. What? There was only the house. What's it worth? It's like living in a great fucking painting is what it is. The place is priceless. The house was not that much cooler than the car, and Mimi went through the house and opened windows and the sliding door to the patio. I know I'm letting in hot air, she said, but I hate things shut. She moved off to the kitchen and offered Stetson a drink. What are you doing? He asked, even as he found and filled 2 glasses with ice. I'm taking off my clothes, she said. They smell of smoke. I should go ahead and burn them. Off came her shell and the wavy pants that shivered down the chair rail fast as she threw them. Underneath, she wore what looked like string. There wasn't much to her. Stetson said. His shirt was off his pants, his shoes. He sniffed his arm. My arm stinks. He put his arm up to his sister's nose. What is that? Pickles? She offered. What did you have for lunch? He sniffed his other arm. Nothing. All the pleasure to be had in looking at Stetson, but Mimi had married Arnold Fine, ugly as an anvil, Arnie. Arnie was dead. Less than a month ago, her husband stepped into the pool and died, age 72, heart attack. He was ashes in a matter of minutes. What happened after Arnie had died happened fast. The ambulance, the body bag, the funeral home, the furnace. Mimi poured vodka into her glass. Tonic, she pointed to the counter, and there's Perrier. Tap was okay with Stetson, but did she have any food? How can you be hungry? Smell your arm, she said. Barely dressed, wearing pointy mules, Mimi walked onto the terrace to a Hockney scene, only not so blue, more green. The lounge chairs were rightly low and wide, hewn from wood that would outlast them. But the pool was a swamp-tinted squiggle, decorative. Stetson had never seen anyone swim in it, and bobbing in the water didn't count. 2 million? 4 million? This is like old times, Mimi said in the water to her waist. You're tempting me, he said. Then, the terrace is small, maybe 2.5? Old times. That's new. She adjusted her strings, distracted by leaves sounding wooden in the wind, if only the wind weren't so hot. How do you insure a priceless place? Stetson asked. You don't. She took up her glass and banged the cubes against her teeth, chewed ice. For a time she stared at the house, then walked out of the pool, shivered, went back to the house to fix herself another drink. Is there someone here? Stetson asked when she returned. The gardener? A gardener came with the house, a man not so new as ignored. The gardener had a leaf blower. The plants weren't a problem, but the grotesque tree shed. Brown leaves, long as shoes, got shoved around the walkways until the nameless gardener came to blow them out of sight. But where? They seemed to disappear just as the gardener disappeared, week to week. Sometimes Mimi heard the hacking cough of his truck, sometimes his blower. Today she had heard nothing. There was nothing much to blow away, nothing dead in the pool, but the slack hose jumped, distended, and withdrew around the house, followed by the sound of water. It had to be the gardener. Mimi went to see, and yes, it was the gardener, misting the front of the house. He had nodded at her. What was wrong with him? Didn't he read the papers? Someone, not Mimi, not today, would have to tell him there was no more work here. She walked back to Stetson, enjoying the ka-tack of her shoes against the stone terrace, a sound both slutty and indulged, right out of the movies. But wasn't Mimi right out of the movies? She was pretty enough, everyone said. Does this really feel like home to you? He asked. Yes, she said, and she adjusted the chair to lie flat, eyes closed, given over to the liquidy heat lapping her pale body. We weren't married long enough for anyone to believe I loved Arnie, she said, but I did. He made me laugh, honestly. There's a marriage measured in months. Aren't you hot? She sat up, wiped her eyes, and walked into the pool again. Come in with me. The water's cold, but you get used to it. If his sister was thin, he was thin too, jailbird, sickly, with his arms held up as he waded deeper, testing. The pool was not very deep, which might explain the slightly yellow color of the water, and the sky, too, was a creepy kind of yellow, a spreading dread. Do you think, she began and didn't finish. She said, the gardener's hosing down the house. When's the last time this pool was cleaned? Stetson treaded the water and looked around him. Just the color, he said, which, along with slimy tiles, was sickening, and he did his swimming, such as it was, in the middle. He dove under, he made a few strokes down and back. Only the tiles along the ledge of the pool seemed unclean, and he avoided the ledge until the last minute when he lifted himself out. Hey, she said, where are you going? Inside. In the kitchen, he refilled his glass and drank enough to fill it again before he set it on the counter, thirsty. His medicine made him thirsty. Mimi came up from behind him and he flinched at her touch. Water splattered against the windows. The gardener was close. You don't get it. I do, she said. You're sober, and I'm not. He said, that's right. Then he took up his glass and walked down the hall into the bathroom where a clunking noise signaled his intention to shower. From the looks of the soap, discolored, cracked, no one had used the downstairs shower for some time. Tepid, rust-colored water pooled at his corpsey feet. He'd been out of the sun for a long time. The clunk of the pipes when he turned off the water echoed, sounding spooky. He couldn't do much with a hand towel, and his long hair dripped onto his collar and down the back of his white shirt. At least he felt cool. At least dressing and the hotter prospects of the hours to come didn't dismay him, but his sister, just getting past her was hard. Mimi stood, almost as he'd left her, knobby in a way that made her look naked. She was listening to nothing he could hear, but her expression suggested the sound grated. What is it? You don't hear that? Not the pipes. There it is again. All he heard was the high-pitched present. Stay, she said. I can't, he said, and said again to himself, backing onto a steep road that wound through the dry brush down the hillside, past other drives and tucked away houses. The houses he could see were messy blots on other hills, expensive blocks, of course, money. Stetson didn't have much, but whose fault was that? He knew that's what his sponsor would say. Why not whine home to Daddy and ask? The late afternoon sky he saw was the same Mimi saw, leached of all its color. Mimi, her eyes stung from the smoke or crying, both. And she drew the drapes and turned on a downstairs light, a small flame in the gloom of the mostly bare and sunken living room. The Ames chair, her husband, startled her. Where had it been that she had not seen it? Then her lawyer, good on his word, called, and she learned what she already knew. Nothing was hers. Briefly sober, she called Stetson to say she wasn't going to drink anymore and she wished he would come back. She didn't like to be alone in the house. I want to get better. I want to get over this. I wish you'd pick up, she said, then blipped off, hurt to think he hadn't even answered a call with her name on it. Would he listen to her message, come back soon enough? She fixed herself more of the same and lowered the blinds in the kitchen and in the dining room to spy on the gardener as he moved around the house. His expression was hard to make out, but she watched him wrestle the hose into a terracotta pot. The hose must have weighed more than he did. Poor man. When she thought he might come to the front door, Mimi took off her mules and went through the house up the floating staircase to the guest bedroom, where she hid between the bed and the wall. Would he knock? She waited. She waited for a long time, which was perhaps what he did, the gardener, in his garden colors. He stood outside the door in good faith of payment, but for what? Hosing down the house against fires, mounting staghorn ferns. What had he done today, this gardener, and why was it she only knew him as shadowy and poor? His stunted children rest their chins on the kitchen table. Sticky fly strips hang near the sink and back door. His wife's scorched hair is in the rice and on his tongue. Now the rice tastes dirty. Look elsewhere. Forget the shapeless face of his fat son. There is his favorite. There, his daughter. Over there, near the fly strips, shaking cinnamon on everything she eats. Even beans, he asks her. The gardener. Where was he now? The gardener's truck was gone. The gardener was gone, left without being paid. Now, how will he feed those children? Driving east into the sensation of a rising sun, driving into mountains made no more attractive than dung by the same sun. Not seen, not seen. Stetson was driving without any music, and Jesus, it hurt to look at it. The desert house is a rusted box on stilts, and the garden made of white crushed rock and cactus, too forbidding to play near, although our mother sits among the stolid barrel heads, plinging the pink spines on her in her cloud of absence. She likes to smoke and watch the sun drop behind the mountains, on the other side of which is the Pacific and our father. Mother says he's watching the same sky, but how does she know this? I do. When she says, I do, she pouts the way Sabine Agard, the actress, would, and not as our mother, but tonight, as she is not Sabine Agard and says nothing about our father or the sky. The backyard is east-facing, untouched desert. That's where the fights take place when our father comes to visit. We have not seen him in a long time, not since last spring break, and it's May. Why aren't we in school? Our mother says we can make up the weeks missed in summer at home in L.A. Our mother makes a face Sabine Agard makes in movies. Shifty. She turns away. On the baked stone she sits, barrel-like and spined, in fishhook spines, to find a sea, yet we know enough not to brush against our mother. We sit small and wait out the sky until it dulls and we go inside. Mimi's job's to scramble dinner, mine's to put out plates. We make a lot of noise, it feels good. Turn on the radio and the Mexican guys in sombreros whine, "Yo estos." "Change the channel," I shout. "I'm busy." Great cracks from the bacon Mimi pokes make us jump and rouse our mother, who sniffs her way in but looks through us. The bacon buckles and the yolks break. "I don't want eggs like that," I say. "You're getting them." "Careful," Mother says, but too late. Grease prickles Mimi's arms and she yelps. Mother says, "I said," and walks away and into her bedroom. No long goodnight tonight, I know. No books, no songs, no prayers, no promises, no stories about when. When you were born, when you were 2 years old, was there ever a time before us, really? Yes. Since we moved to the desert, Mother thinks most about what happened before with people we don't remember. I shun the eggs and stick waddled fat from the bacon up my nose. "That's disgusting," Mimi cries. "Look what Stetson's doing." But our mother is gone. The next morning, they wheel our mother out in a bag. I am 8 years old. My sister is 11. Someone drives us to a little airport, puts us on a little plane. We know we are going to our father. 2. Jack DeMint took a seat at the slightly crapped-up Starbucks table Stetson had found for them. He slapped away the crumbs but said the table was okay, and black coffee was okay, sure. Most of it happened was okay, had to be, didn't it? "So, how does it look to be sober at the Grove on a Friday night?" Jack asked. The Grove, that gimmicky shopping center with its trolleys and fountains, statues and flags, small cobbled lamp with a clock tower before a copper dome, all the old-timey business with almost none of the filth. Unexpectedly wrapped, dipped, and frozen foods, pretzels, bananas, Oreos, popcorn, ice cream, and chocolate stores, restaurants. At every turn, a person could do worse than get fat at the Grove, although working in colognes for Stetson was hardly smart. He might drink them. "Why don't you quit?" Jack asked. "Taking care of an old actor 3 days a week is hardly my idea of steady employment," Stetson said. "I'm trying to get serious, Dad." "I'm sure he pays you better than this." "He does. His daughter does. But you try taking hold of an old cock so its owner can remember what to do with it." "I do." "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Dad," Stetson said. "My supervisor's my sponsor." Jack DeMint quickly twisted in his seat to see the clock. "I know. Reformed drunks are bores," Stetson said. "All we talk about is drinking, but I don't have another topic. God, I'm sick of coffee." "Look at me," Jack said. "You don't have to hang around with those guys. If I can be with my own kind sober, so can you. You had some talents, cowboy." "So you say." "How old are you?" 24. "And you're selling men's cologne?" "I'm doing the best I can, okay? I want a better job. I'm going to get a better job. It's always the same with you, Dad. Let's not argue. So, what's going on with your sister?" "Last time I saw her, she was living in a painting." "I don't know what that means." "She was still in Arnie Fine's house, but she was expecting bad news from the lawyer, and I think she got it. The news, that is, not the house. She got nada." 3. Jack DeMint, alone again, watched and rocked while on the TV fires unevenly advanced again in the Malibu hills. He was safe, but Mimi wasn't, was she? What did Stetson know? Jack had warned her. Comedians don't retire. They just get more depressed. Arnie Fine, a once funny man, had died of a curdled heart. How many times had Jack told her, Arnie Fine will not make you laugh? She had insisted he did. She said, I'm not in this for the money. Stetson had last seen Mimi in the Dead Comics house drinking vodka tonics. Poor Stetson. Everywhere the boy looked, he saw alcohol. In the morning, Jack DeMint told his trainer about Arnie Fine, not mentioning Mimi. The trainer had never heard of Arnie Fine. The trainer was from one of those places in Eastern Europe that Jack associated with mass graves and wet wool coats. I don't know this man, he shouted. Everything the trainer said came out loud. But to be fair, when Jack thought about it, as a Chechen, he had probably survived by being loud. Neighbors using hatchets on each other. For lunch, Jack had a vegetarian concoction, kale, lemon, mint, astringent drink that made his blood fizz. He drank water, several glasses of water, along with the kale juice. His lunch companion, his secretary, Jody, had the same. How does that make you feel? Jack asked. Full? Jody responded. She had printed out his emails because Jack loathed computers. Now he dictated responses, mostly no's. No. Jesus, Jody, you know the answer to that one. He refused to give money to cure diseases he didn't know. Where to after lunch but Walmart's for slippers? He needed new slippers. Jack had his driver take him to Walmart's, and the two of them walked through the store until they found slippers. Everyone in this country is fat, Jack said, and he made no effort to be discreet, but repeated himself as he sensed approach, which happened from time to time, so that he said something repellent, something about the aisle and its width, the supersized quantities of crap he considered a tub of mayonnaise. Jack thought better of it and let his driver pay for the slippers, though Jack took the receipt. He heard the low utterance of his name and was ruffled by the flurry of two women passing. In the car, Jack told his driver the next stop was Malibu. He wanted to see for himself was the famous house still standing. Yes, the house, a stacked appearance as of bones. He could almost see it, the house named after its architect, Alessandro Pirro. The Pirro house was upright. Jack could see it as the car took the last turn, but was his daughter in it? If they were on speaking terms, he'd know. But they had stopped speaking 3 or 4 months ago when Mimi told him she had married Arnie Fine. At home again, in the room he called a study despite the toys in it, treadmill, golf clubs, small weights. Jack called Stetson to tell him his sister's house was still standing. You sound tired, Jack said. I wonder why, Stetson said. His charge, the old actor, was at his elbow, bird mouth open, waiting to be fed. What are you doing? I'm taking care of Jean. What do you think? If you're so worried, Dad, why don't you call her yourself? Stetson wasn't worried. Mimi had money. She could manage, although even as he said that, Stetson was unsure. Mimi was a raw widow, low on friends and funds. Funds, he didn't know. But she was defenseless against 4 stepchildren, all of them older, one by 20 years. Arnie Fine had been an old man, older than Jack. What the hell was she thinking, Jack asked. Rhetorical question. Nothing Mimi had done so far would suggest she was very bright. 4. The eyes should be just about here, Arnie Fine, once upon a time, had said, and he pointed 2 tiny frown crescents above his cheeks. If his cheeks were red, he would have looked like a sad elf. But Arnie's skin was a sallow yellow, dingy where he shaved, and he shaved poorly, so he looked like an ill-intentioned elf with black bristles and acne scars, fat creases serving as a neck. A face hard to touch, much less kiss, and he knew it. He didn't care. He had never cared, or he didn't care anymore. What was the difference? He was rich. He was funny. His face was funny. The bowling ball shape was classically funny. Also, the baldness helped. Was there ever a fat comedian with a lot of hair? Probably, but the ones that came to mind for him that looked like him, the Don Rickles of the world, had withering hairlines. Fine was more of a bawdy comic. He wasn't unkind. He loved women and bemoaned his bad luck with them. He had always loved Ruthie, no matter what anyone said, but celebrity and money made him more attractive to women at 70 than at any other time in his life. That Mimi DeMinth should find him somehow attractive, or at least should want to spend time with him, well, he had to take advantage of it, of the moment, of all the money he'd made. Not A-list money, sure, no, not that, but money to have a famous house, a fast car, a young wife. How was he to know his heart was clogged? In the months leading up to Arnie's death, his oldest son, Don, had convinced him to make a will for no other reason than, at 72, he should have one. The will left most of what he had to his children. Ruthie, who had predeceased him, might even have forgiven him his endless infidelities had she known what he was doing for their children. He left Mimi DeMinth his beloved car, a 1970 Mustang convertible. 5. Despite the theatrical thunderhead rising above the mountains, Mimi drove toward it, drove into the desert with the top down at speeds equally dramatic. She wore cat's eye sunglasses and a tied-on straw bonnet, the rim of which blatted in the wind. Desert driving in a convertible. All of my cars have been convertibles, in her mother's voice. If only she could hear it. But Mimi's memory for any part of her mother was dismally approximate. To see the rusted house again might help, but how to find it? A lot of people had cactus gardens. What made her think theirs was special? She passed through towns no bigger than beads, and in between drove over 80 miles an hour. The clouds advanced in electrical air. She looked up and felt the first large, sloppy drops of rain. The rain fell faster, and she slowed up the car, pumped the brake, then braked hard and slewed onto the shoulder. She got the top up, but not before it wet the dash. Yet for all the water that fell from the sky, first the pockety sound, puffs of dust, then a downpour, the desert floor only steamed when it was over, hardly wet, but the earth smelled sweet. For her mother, the desert was home. Sabine Agard, her mother's real name, and no one had ever suggested she change it. was born in Algiers. Her first language was French, and her accented English came out haltingly and often sounded like a small cry. Creep, creep. She was very tiny. She wore a size 4.5 shoe and size 0 clothes. Sabine Agard didn't sneeze so much as squeak. It didn't take a lot to kill her. Mimi bought water at the gas station and held the bottle against her face and considered the journey. 3 hours out of LA and here already. First stop, her destination. Not bad. Now what? She bought a map and studied it. Culp, Canyon, Sweetbush, in hopes she might find the street, then find the house, commune with Sabine, figure out the future. It didn't surprise her then that a man should step up to ask what she was looking for, and might he help? His name was Zorn. He was from LA, but he had a home in the desert. An attractive woman waited in the front seat of a Mercedes convertible, although Mimi's car was better. Mimi said she was looking for a house she had lived in a long time ago. She couldn't remember the street, but the house was unusual, at least to her, then a girl, not quite 12. The house she remembered didn't look like a house, but like a pile of rusted cars welded together. The cactus garden was dressed in stone. He couldn't help her there, he said, and he was sorry, and so was she. The Indian who sold her the map at the convenience store didn't know the area either. He hauled up words in his heavy accent. Was everyone in the desert from away? And dropped them at her feet until, tired, he simply ceased to speak. At the Best Western, the man at the front desk told Mimi the house had probably been swallowed up by the Bottle Brush development, and he showed her how to get there. She got herself a room at the Best Western, then drove out to find Bottle Brush, and off Bottle Brush, an unpaved road to the end. She remembered that much. No other houses nearby. But now, how strange it was to see house after house of what she sort of remembered in the same stone gardens, cactus gardens, some with rusted garden ornaments, tin road runners and jackrabbits and sunflowers. The sunflowers were especially out of place. They had a pool, she remembered, ordinary, small. Once, a photographer got access to the desert house and took photos of their mother stepping into the pool. In the photograph, her breasts were blurred. Her mother's former publicist and friend, Estelle, had given Mimi this and other photographs at a memorial service, saying, "You may not want to look at these now." And Mimi didn't look. For a long time. For a long time, she was angry. At the end of a washboard road, Mimi found a house that seemed alike enough, although its remembered welded quality had been altered somehow, whitewashed or stuccoed, something. A garage as charmless as a storage shed was now attached to the house, if this was the house, and she thought it was, or it might be, given that it was the last house at the end of a long, rough road. The bucket chairs were gone, also the cactus. The desert looked the same from any angle, but the garden was just stone now, and the stone, terrible white in the light that had followed the storm. Mimi knocked at the front door, but no one answered. She looked through a window and saw a churning gray as if the house were filled with water. She was about to knock again when a rattling car pulled roughly into the drive and nosed the garage. A woman in a sleeveless jean jacket opened the door. The woman's long arms were loose, all the fat tented near the elbow. She wore white tennis shoes. Her legs were greenly varicosed. "I hope you're not here about my son." "No." I've told the authorities all I know. I don't know where he is. No, Mimi said. I'm here because I think I used to live here. This already seemed impossible. I doubt it, sweetie, the woman said, and Mimi was on the verge of agreeing. It would have been in the mid-90s. The woman regarded her house with an appraising expression as if someone had offered her a lot of money for it. Why don't you come in and see? She took out 2 bags of groceries from the back seat, and Mimi followed her into the house. Look familiar? The woman asked. They were in the kitchen, and she was putting up big cans of tomato juice. No, Mimi said, not really. Already she had forgotten the woman's name. You looking up all the old places? Mimi knew this was not the house, but once the jug of Stoli was out of the bag, Mimi didn't want to leave. People came to the desert to dry out or drink, smoke, or get spiritual, and this woman had the shape of a drinker. They drank from crystal quilted jelly jars from when the woman, whose name Mimi still could not remember, made and sold prickly pear jelly. I had me quite a business for a while, she said. Then my husband died, and Dean, that's my son, got crazier. Mimi waited for her to say more, but she didn't. Instead, the woman asked about Mimi's car, how old it was, and when she got it. Learning the car was a gift, she said. Someone sure liked you. My husband, Mimi said. You look too young to be married. Well, I was. He died. I'm sorry, she said. Accident? Heart attack, Mimi said. He was older. God, girl, I hope he was really old. 72. How old are you? 27. My son's age, the woman said. Dean. And just as she said his name, the son, the mean Dean, slammed his way into the kitchen with a gun and shot his mother in the face. Then he saw... Action! I never have action. Nothing happens in my stories. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're all shocked. That's a thrill. Just a thrill. After we've been killing animals. And again, shot his mother in the face. Then he saw, or seemed to see, Mimi. He looked at her with no expression and what thought she couldn't even guess at, though she made no effort to move or to speak before he turned the gun on himself. That fast, violence by its very nature happens fast. Mimi sat mute witness to the immediate deflation of the body, shapeless and clothes on the instant, turned too large and loose in a kind of flesh melt. Brain and bone and blood splatter on her shirt, the table, the floor, the window, her shoes in a puddle. This was the house, all right. Thank you.